Welcome, everyone. I now call the September 9th, 2025 regular City Council meeting to order. Please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. At this point, we'll take a moment to take a roll call of the council members by position number. Please say here when the city clerk calls your name. City clerk?
Thank you. Councilmember Zorn?
Here.
Mayor Thompson?
Here.
Councilmember Alders?
Here.
Councilmember Kurd?
Here.
Councilmember Mankey?
Here.
Councilmember Dodd?
Here.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Here.
All present.
Got a full house. First up on our agenda is meeting agenda approval. Are there any changes to tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll move on to public engagement opportunities. September is Puget Sound Starts Here month. Keeping Puget Sound healthy starts at home. Take the Puget Sound Starts Here pledge and commit to one simple action to prevent stormwater pollution. We've got the last of Moonlight on Main, Bothell's Summer Night Market series this weekend, Saturday, 6 o'clock p.m. And Sustainamania it's time for again. Bothell's annual Sustainability Festival returns at City Hall. There will be touch of trucks, live music, a repair cafe, food trucks, and a wide variety of local artisans, businesses, and organizations. It's on September 20th from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. Next up, we have a couple of proclamations. We are going to start with Welcoming Week. Whereas Welcoming Week is celebrated annually each September by hundreds of cities, towns, and organizations to promote compassion, unity, and respect for our neighbors with a shared vision that all community members are valued and protected. And whereas Welcoming Week gives us the opportunity to bring together neighbors across Bothell and invites us to work together toward a prosperous and welcoming Bothell in which diverse people from across the world feel like they belong in our community. And whereas the Welcoming Week 2025 theme, Stories We Share, calls us to celebrate our diverse experiences and find our common ground through the stories we share, which connect us and make us stronger. And whereas our city recognizes all that makes us unique, including our rich tapestry of ethnicities, religious beliefs, abilities, gender identities, sexual orientations, nationalities, neurodiversity, and life experiences. And whereas to be truly welcoming, a community needs intentional, inclusive policies, practices, norms, activities, and gathering places that enable all residents to thrive, which we commit ourselves to develop working hand in hand with the community. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim September 12th through the 21st to be Welcoming Week in the City of Bothell and call on every Bothell community member to reach across lines of differences and contribute to making our region a more welcoming place for every new and long-term community member alike. And I believe we have some community members from our DEI Advisory Committee here to accept.
Thank you. Hello, my name is Jace Bronca. I'm a student here in the community as well as a resident for a little over 6 years. And I would like to take a moment just to talk about things from the student's perspective a little bit more. That's because I am a student. That's pretty much all I know how to be, and that's the community I feel like I can represent the best. And I'd like to take a moment to thank the students and the families of students who have encouraged their kids and their young adults to step out of their comfort zone and join the academic community, even when it may not feel welcoming or it may not feel familiar. And I think it's so important that we welcome diverse communities, whether it be different immigration statuses, sexual orientation, or anything of the like, to share their stories, especially sharing stories when doing so can feel uncertain or even scary at times, because it strengthens the entire community. It adds so much to the educational environment. I think that as students particularly who may not share such a similar background, it is so important for us to learn other people's experiences, because I don't think we can truly understand our whole curriculum or get a whole holistic experience. So I'd like to say thank you to all of those who have either taken that leap themselves or encouraged their students, or the students who maybe haven't even taken that step yet to come out and share their story, because it betters the entire community. And I can only speak for what I know, and that is the city of Bothell. We're very welcoming. Thank you.
And I'm Kathy Kranz, a longtime resident of Bothell, and really we're excited about this proclamation as a commitment by the city of Bothell to make it a welcoming environment for everyone, whether it's our residents or our visitors, and we look forward to continuing to build on that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, yes, we can do it now. Let's do a picture. All right, next up, we have Puget Sound Starts Here month. Christy, we will totally take a picture for you too if you want. The offer stands. Whereas Puget Sound and the waterways that connect our mountains to the shore contribute to Bothell's economic infrastructure, quality of life, and our natural resources. And whereas City Council's 2040 vision for environmental stewardship emphasizes the importance of valuing and protecting our ecological resources. And whereas water quality is a priority for the health and welfare of Bothell residents. And whereas Bothell has joined with state agencies and more than 750 local organizations, governments, and tribes to engage residents in protecting and improving local and regional water quality. And whereas Puget Sound Starts Here month is an opportunity for the public to learn how they can help protect Puget Sound and our local waterways. Now, therefore, I, Mason Thompson, Mayor of the City of Bothell, do hereby proclaim the month of September 2025 as Puget Sound Starts Here month in the City of Bothell, and call upon all community members to protect natural resources by reducing and eliminating sources of water pollution.
Thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and council members. I'm Christy Cox, and I'm one of Bothell's Surface Water Program coordinators. Puget Sound Starts Here month reminds us that protecting water can start with small, everyday actions. Unlike our sewer system, Bothell's storm drainage system carries water directly to streams, rivers, and eventually Puget Sound without treatment. So what goes down our storm drains truly does matter. Simple actions like picking up after pets, using natural yard care methods, maintaining our vehicles, may seem like minor things, but together they can make a meaningful difference for our local waterways. I invite our community to take a pledge to help protect Puget Sound. You can do that at bothellwa.gov/PSSH. And if you're planning to attend Sustainamania on September 20th, we welcome you to stop by our table and connect with us. Thank you again, Council, for recognizing Puget Sound Starts Here month and for continuing to support environmental stewardship.
Thank you. All right, next up is public comment. The city has accepted public comments in writing as well as signups for those who wish to speak at tonight's meeting. Written comments submitted to the city clerk no later than 3 p.m. today were forwarded to all city council members and are part of the record. When the clerk calls your name, you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Please note that council will receive your input, but we do not engage in discussion of these topics. Staff will make note of items requiring follow-up. City clerk.
Thank you, Mayor Thompson. I do not have anybody signed up this evening. However, if there's anybody in the audience who wishes to speak, please step to the podium, state your name for the record, and you will have 3 minutes. We do not have anybody, and we do not have anyone online.
All right, thank you. Next up is reports, our city manager report. City manager.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, City Council. We do have one staff briefing tonight, but before we turn it over to that, I wanted to take a brief moment on theme with Welcoming Week to be able to welcome our new superintendent of schools here in the North Shore School District, Dr. Justin Irish, and welcome him to come say a few words of introduction to both the council and the community this evening.
All right. Good evening, council members, Mayor Thompson, City Manager Stannard, and the city leadership staff. I really appreciate being here this evening. Thank you for the great welcome. And I just also want to thank the community who has come forward with Welcoming Week. I just want to say, as a new member of the community, how that matters so much to have a proclamation like this and to have a city council who takes that seriously. As my husband and I moved to Bothell and are living here, we have felt an immense amount of welcome, of warmth, of inclusivity, and it is incredible.
You're too charming for the microphone, Dr. Irish.
See if we can make that work.
There we go. So I just want to say it is truly, it's an honor to move to this area and to feel the incredible onboarding experience and to feel such an incredible sense of community here. And that makes me proud to serve as the superintendent, because I know that strong schools are a result of strong community. And it's a result of strong partnerships with our city councils and with our municipalities. And I'm just looking forward to learning more about our partnerships and the ways in which we can continue to create great opportunities, not only for our students, but for our community as a whole. I'm just ending my second month, and I'm learning a lot, and going to be starting my What Matters Most tour here soon. So anybody who is watching online, please look at nsd.org. It's an opportunity for me to learn a little bit more about the community, understand what matters most to our community, to our families, and to our students, so that I can better be of service to this community. And look forward to partnering with you. And thank you again for the great welcome and for a wonderful proclamation and for a great community who brought that forward. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Irish.
Yeah, thank you very much. All right, so council, tonight we do have a first of what we do intend to be a periodic update for you, and that is an update on development activity here in Bothell. As you know, you've made a number of decisions through the comprehensive plan and related actions related to development, and so we want to be able to give you some real-time examples then of how the community is responding. For tonight's update, I'm going to turn things over to our Deputy Director of Community Development, Christian Getz. Go ahead.
Thank you, City Manager. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council. It's glad to be back after a short break. Excited to step into the fall here. So yes, as City Manager mentioned, want to give you an update on kind of where we're sitting, what we're seeing, what's closing out. So this is just information tonight only. Want to start by sort of setting the table for the community, for those that may not be aware, but all development activity is reviewed by these divisions represented here within 3 different departments. So within, it's not just community development that does the work on permit review, establishing development standards, but Public Works, our engineering crew over there, as well as our fire services group. So those divisions join with community development to look through and figure out how to best apply our codes, how to make sure that we're being as clear and concise as possible. One of the newer tools that's out there is the construction project map. This is a development dashboard that's pulled directly from our larger projects, projects that require public noticing if it's a private development. The blue dots, this is a snapshot from a couple weeks ago, represent all public projects. The different colors represent different types. So you can go to the website there with our interactive maps, take a look at what's going on. It does not reflect an infill single-family home or an addition, alteration, tenant improvement, mechanical permit. There are thousands of those that we deal with on a regular basis, and it would just get too cluttered. So these give a good representation of what's going on. I want to talk through sort of the three steps of projects. There's the land use or entitlement phase, where a project is going through either a subdivision, a conditional use permit, establishing the allowed use. These are just some of the larger to medium scale plats or multifamily projects that are going on. That are in that land use phase. So they're not ready for construction permits yet. This is step one. Some of these have been in process for a year or two or three sometimes. After this, these would move into the construction phase when they've gone through development or construction permitting. This represents what's left of a huge grouping of projects that have around 400 residential units that are still coming about. Including, the Sama Senior Housing, just about done, 102 Main, which the crane is up and moving forward, and then a series of plats. Not to mention the non-commercial work, the Gemco campus that's ready to go, and then Sound Transit bus space, which is breaking ground currently. So those are just a few of them. I didn't want to list them all. Some of the more recently completed projects, Lexington Block D, and the Husky Village, larger ones, Avalon Seattle Times near downtown. Both the Seattle Times site and the Lexington project, just for reference, they started back in 2020. So this is 5-year, 6-year cycle for that. Before that, they were most likely working with the development service groups to understand what could they build. So these are multi-year projects. Those 400 units that I mentioned, they're going to be building out to the former standards, and then we'll start to see the newer wave of projects come through. And I'll get to kind of what we're seeing in these last several months. Just a quick snapshot. This was in the staff memo. We're doing pretty well as far as how many year-to-date permits we're taking in, we're issuing. There's quite a bit of pre-application meetings. Pre-application meetings are those where an applicant comes before us and says, "Here's what I'd like to build. Do you have any concerns?" They're testing the waters there, and what we've seen with a huge number of these is that as the leading indicator of future projects, it's in this phasing learning process. So what we've seen are a large increase. There are about 1,000 residential units that are made up of all of these applications starting just this year. There were some towards the end of last year as the writing was on the wall with the comp plan updates, with the code updates, with increased density, developers trying to figure out how could they make it work, how could they make their project work. We are seeing them not developing to the maximum density, but they are learning, and we're working through that. So projects that might not have met at least the minimum density and they need to dial it up a little bit, they're blending products. So whereas a townhome product that might not have achieved the density requirement, now they're blending it with a stacked apartment or a condo building. So it's kind of interesting to see on the fly. We're hopeful that the economic concerns sort of peter out and leave us alone as we see a lot of really cool and interesting product that folks are looking to do. And our staff continue to work with them. So it sounds as though they're ready to go. They just want to make sure that the financing is gonna pencil for them. And last bullet point on there are a variety of housing types that we're seeing, from standalone single family, middle housing, mixed use, and multifamily product. that's coming in through these preliminary discussions. So that's what I've got for you. Here for any questions if you've got them. But yeah, as city manager said, we'd like to make sure we're coming back and presenting kind of what we're seeing as projects come forward, whether it's semi-annually or annually, just to make sure you're aware.
Does nobody else have any questions? Deputy Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Christian. I like how you started out saying a short break. I don't know if that meant it's not long enough or something. But anyway, yeah, thank you for this presentation. At the end there, you mentioned something, and we're learning from the feedback we're getting. A question from what you're hearing from the preliminary applications and the discussions is, are any of our minimum densities too high for things to pencil out for some projects?
They've raised questions in some of the meetings. One instance, the builder indicated that's not the product type they're used to, but they do know that it is doable. They know it's possible. We've seen products where they've come back with a revision to include something that is more of a blended multifamily and townhome development. Multifamily stacked, is what I mean. So kind of working through making sure that their product type can work. We meet regularly with the Development Services Advisory Group, so a number of developers around the community with master builders. We're working with them on some of the middle housing updates that we're working through that we'll be bringing back later this fall. So trying to maintain communication, but we're not getting no's as far as no, I'm never coming back. It's okay. Let me figure this out. Let's work through it, and that's where a lot of the continued conversations with the development service team continues in the background.
Okay, that's cool. Thank you.
Councilmember Curd?
Thanks for the presentation. It's really cool to see that there's a connection between policy and work on the ground, which is the whole reason why we're up here, right? I wanted to thank you for sending the reminder to check the map. It had been a while since I clicked on it, and wow, it's changed. Lots of new things on there. One of the things that you had highlighted in your presentation in a bullet point and also in the packet was a self-storage building that has been permitted on Bothell Everett Highway near Canyon Park. And I am recalling conversations that we had really early on in the comprehensive planning process, which is now several years ago, but talking about how to ensure activity units stayed in Canyon Park. This specific project isn't ringing the alarm bells for me because it's outside of the sub area, but it's maybe a cautionary tale for developers who may want to just put something on their lot so that it creates sort of a passive income while it doesn't really generate community benefit through creation of a working neighborhood. And so what are your thoughts about our existing policies around self-storage or lack thereof, and is that a concern for maintaining our designation in Canyon Park?
Yeah, I think Canyon Park's interesting with the minimum floor area ratio standards. Definitely something that we want to keep an eye on and discuss with the upcoming 2026 end of next year start of a sub-area plan revisitation. Are those minimums ideal? Do they need to be tweaked? Let's talk about uses and making sure highest and best use within and then immediately surrounding the sub-area. The regional growth center, are they adequate?
Right, and when you say highest and best use, that's not like a taxation terminology. That's from our policy standpoint of creating an active neighborhood.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
Right. It's making sure the activity units are high. We're getting a blend of residential, commercial, activating that space. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. The last thing I'd want to see is just building to the maximum envelope to create the big buildings that we wanted, but not actually making them for people. So that's something that I'll be watching closely, and I'd love to have maybe a deeper conversation about what some of the other cities that have struggled with, I don't think that we're struggling with, but that have experienced a tremendous boom in self-storage applications after code changes related to maximizing building envelopes. So love to pick your brain more, but maybe not a council night. Thanks.
Councilmember Dodd.
Thank you. Thanks for the update. I appreciate it. I think as Councilmember Curd noted, the map does have updates, which have been pretty helpful. So that's pretty awesome. And on the theme of agreeing with Councilmember Curd, I also was it feels like a lost opportunity that self-storage is going in on Bothell Highway, where we have future rapid transit. Like, it's not a very exciting use. It's not something that brings people out. It's not something that builds community. It's just where you put stuff. So as we talk about updates and stuff going on, I'd love to make sure that we really somehow marry our policy to what we want to see in these corridors and just that active use. Like, I think it's just kind of like, oh, okay. So less of that feeling, whatever you would call it. Thank you.
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Christian, for putting this together and presenting to us. This is the first time that I've been on council that we've seen a development update like this. And it's really, really great to see. I've been looking at like the trends in terms of volume and like how we're doing compared to other years. So I think that's really interesting information that you've put in here for us. And I guess I just want to like check in with your department. Like, how are you all handling the volume? Are there enough of you to manage the requests that you're seeing?
I think we're doing just fine. I think we anticipated sort of this uneasy, not quite sure for this next biennium, but we would definitely we'll keep the barometer out there for how busy we are. Yes, if all of these came in at once, I don't know what we'd do, but we would figure it out, and we might be back for another conversation. But we're hoping for a gradual increase in submittals that keep us going as these larger projects that we still have in the works wrap up.
Yeah, and it looks like that there have been in recent years even higher volumes than what you're seeing now, and it's not like, although your team is still relatively new, you've all kind of joined us more recently, and we're really glad that you're here and doing this work. It's great to see the type of, I guess I would love to see like it broken down by type of housing, especially as we look more at the income bands, as we start having to, think about, like, we've planned for income bands, but then now how are we tracking our success at meeting those targets? But, I see affordable housing projects in here. There's, SAMA's supposed to be opening soon, and it really is an opportunity, I think, for us to work with developers and create the type of housing that we need to see. So the variety of all housing types is a huge win for for this comprehensive plan for community development, and for people who are coming to Bothell and want to help contribute to our community. So thanks.
All right. Thank you for this. It's really exciting to see changes that we make up here that are theoretical and happen on paper actually start to change things in the real world, and we're getting close to seeing real projects built under our new code. Then that is super exciting. Historically, how many of what percentage of pre-app projects pull through?
It's pretty high, because if that one developer for that one pre-application meeting doesn't follow through, that site is still a potential redevelopment site. So someone else may come in. So it's a pretty high number as far as redevelopment occurring. It just matters on, it's a timing thing. So
Okay.
short term, it's probably less than half, but in the long term, you're probably seeing closer to 80, 90%, because we just don't see lots sit, whether it's an undeveloped or a underdeveloped site.
Okay.
We eventually see it happen.
I mean, that makes sense. I would love eventually to be able to have data on like how many of the units that are getting proposed that eventually get built like wouldn't have been able to be built under our prior code before we did the comp plan update. Are you guys tracking that?
Yes, and we will be tracking, for Councilmember Aldrich's point, for our annual reporting for Commerce. We'll be reporting number of units that are created, what the income band was, as we go through these first 5 years.
Awesome. And as we've changed quite a bit in terms of what is able to be built on a lot of lots, are we running into barriers we didn't expect that make it harder to build to the maximum density?
The development services group, fire, public works, engineering, we do kind of run into what's the roadway width need to be, fire service. So there are some discussions that have to take place, but I don't think there's anything that is preventing the density from occurring. It's just the design that might be proposed needs to be modified by the developer with the input and support from fire, public works, engineering. And we can look to maybe bring back some examples of here's how it moves through the process.
Okay.
Once we have an actual project, we didn't want to put up any images of here's a potential project, here's another potential project. We want to bring back those actuals once they're in, maybe early next year.
Awesome. If we see things that are coming up over and over and over again, and that that's an opportunity for a code change, I assume you're keeping track of that sort of thing, and we'll bring them back to us. Awesome. I probably don't have to ask, are you going to do your job? Because you are, and I trust you, so I'm sorry. And I just want to also add on to what Councilmember Curd said about the storage units. I think maybe bigger picture than just storage units. If there are land uses out there that are pretty opposed to what we're trying to create and we see as harmful to the fabric of our community, I would welcome a conversation about where we should and shouldn't allow those types of things, or if we should at all. It's like drive-throughs is another example. They really harm walkability. They take up a ton of space. They just mean there's a lot more traffic instead of a lot more there. So I'm sure there's more uses I could think of, not sitting in a meeting off the top of my head. But is that something? I guess I shouldn't ask if that's a conversation we could have, but I've heard a few people say that up here. How difficult would that change be?
We could explore it through through projects like the downtown sub-area update, where we're focusing on what we want the downtown to look like, and the uses we want to see there, as well as within Canyon Park. And then broadly, we can look citywide of specific areas that we're looking for, that you're looking for, uses that you think would benefit, or uses that you think may detract from the ideal goals. Okay.
Cool. Well, and we have that coming back pretty soon, so we'll have the chance to have that conversation. Other than that, just thank you. We've really appreciated working with you and Jason and the rest of the team during the comp plan update, and we're just really excited to see things actually happening. So we appreciate you, and we appreciate you bringing this report back to us. Thank
Mayor,
you.
could I jump in with a question?
Yeah.
Thanks. This inspired by the mayor. Is it possible for storage units to be mixed use?
I suppose anything could be mixed use. It could be part of a commercial project.
And so I wonder if that might be a potential avenue for folks who want to bring more storage units into the community, if there might be. So I don't necessarily know how the process works, but if we could encourage mixed use so that we're getting some housing and some active space along with the storage units, that might be kind of a way to be inspired by what we're hearing up here.
Councilmember Dodd's about to disagree with you.
I like the idea. I believe it or not, I try not to disagree just to disagree. But storage units attract a lot of nuisance traffic and a lot of theft and a lot of things. And part of the reason I'm concerned about the location of the one on Bothell Highway is it's surrounded by housing. So if you talk to any one of our officers or anyone in public safety outside of Bothell, it's just a center point where people focus activity that I wouldn't want near housing. So I would be concerned from that aspect. I think there are a lot of sort of false things people say about types of development that generate crime, but storage units are a pretty tried and true attraction for people who want to take things of value.
I would also say that this is probably a good conversation for when we actually talk about it. But I'm going to get the last word in because, I would just say there's lots of places where people can store their stuff. I'd rather store the people and build the housing.
Store the people? House.
What did I say? Store the people? Oh, well, there was a consistency thing. The Christian's like, can I go now? You're good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. And curiosity isn't quiet.
Yeah.
Harkening back to our previous conversation. That concludes the city manager report tonight, and I'll turn things back over to you.
Fantastic. Next up is council committee reports, community reports, and conversations. Councilmember Curd.
Thank you, Mayor. K4C, King County City Climate Collaboration. There's another C in there. K4C, the environmental organization of cities in King County, met on Friday the 5th, and we got a presentation from PSC on various programming that they have for customers. Since moving to the Bothell side of, or the Snohomish County side of Bothell, and now I'm no longer paying PSC for electricity. I'm no longer able to take advantage of those programs that I just learned about now, but they're going to be pushing out a lot more education to their customers. They have a couple of so they're under a mandate to stop using coal in Washington to electrify homes. And so to facilitate that, they're opening up a large wind farm. They're doing a lot of solar, and they are reevaluating sort of costs and benefits for residents to employ solar in their own homes too. And so they're going to have increased education to that effect. And so customers in Bothell and the King County side of Bothell can take advantage of those programs. Also, I am unable to go tomorrow, or maybe it's Thursday, to the PIC meeting. I think it's tomorrow. And neither is Deputy Mayor Alcabra, but it is being held at the new transit station on Mercer Island. So that's an update from there, but I'm not going to be able to go. So I don't know if others are able to go in our stead, and tomorrow is kind of short notice anyway. So I guess I will forward along any information I receive or photos of the tour to council. And that's my update. Thanks.
Councilmember Zorns.
No update. We had some heroes this summer, and they made for a pretty fantastic summer for the people of Bothell. So the Parks Department is my hero for really making some really magical summer nights happen for the people of Bothell. I think it'll get us through the winter. So thank you to Blaine and you, Nick, and all of staff. And I know some of the other departments came in and provided community interest that the community really cares about. And it was great. Were some really great events and very well attended.
Councilmember Aldrich? Oh.
I hadn't pressed the button.
Oh.
I guess I'm bringing this up, so I don't have any reports. The next meeting I'll be attending is on Friday with Eastside Transportation Partnership. But I wanted to open up a little bit of a conversation around a number of emails that we've received from community members expressing surprise and dismay at their ecology bill that have come in. And there's been a lot of just questions of like, well, why this increase? And I wanted to just open it up to a conversation with my colleagues here of, what have you been telling community is the result or there is the reason for that? And how can we address the concerns of our community based on those bills?
I'm a little nervous because I'm not one of the experts, but what I've been telling people is that we had a contract that we signed before the pandemic and all the associated inflation that we maxed out as long as we could. And then we signed one in a context that was very, very different than what it was before. And also they were the only people to bid on it. So our options were we can have garbage service for people that want it or not for people who don't, or not at all. So that's what I've been saying.
I replied to the email, but not the written letter yet. And I said along the same lines as the mayor that we received one bid, that it's a 10-year cycle, and so it's not something that we can renegotiate all the time. I mentioned that we send our waste to King County's landfill, which is reaching its twilight years, and we're going to be scrambling once that's full to come up with new ideas. And that's one of the things that, for all the stuff that comes out of PIC, one of the things is this utility conversation that's happening in November that hasn't actually been scheduled yet, but I think it would really be good for not just me, but more than one person from council to attend that, just so that we have more representation and especially people who live in King County can have representation that really speaks to the need, right? So we recognize that the bill is hard for folks, and that with the recology bills, we have a alignment with our other discounts for disabled seniors, and so I don't know if that necessarily goes far enough for everybody, and so there may be creative solutions that we can partner with other cities on, or we can really learn from other cities at that event. So I haven't been sharing that utility convention with folks who have emailed in, but it is something that's on my mind, and I really would like, when we get that date out from PIC, I would like more people from the dais to show up to that, so that we can share more dimensions of what our community is going through. It's not just us either. So yeah, I think it's not just us. Other cities are seeing the increases too. So that's the frustrating part about not having a lot of control here.
Councilmember Dodd?
Thanks. It's been hard to talk about because I was dismayed when I got my bill, but I knew it was coming. It's not, it's an increase that makes sense logically, but it doesn't feel good, It's like when something crappy happens and I feel like I'm explaining to my family, like, oh, this is why we're not going on this vacation or something, except it's your garbage bill. And people do get around getting trash service, but I won't be doing that. So it's a necessity for me. I think I've had, neighbors talk to me about it, of course, when we're taking out our garbage, and stuff like that. And just explaining, I think it helps a little to know that everyone else is in this boat, but it's just not a good spot to be in. So I think acknowledging that it sucks. And also, I appreciate Councilmember Curd, you talking about this forward thinking. I don't live in King County, but you know, I like to volunteer, so I'm happy to go with you. And maybe we can get a third who lives in King County, just staring at the four of you. But yeah, it just sucks. And I think people also appreciate when we can acknowledge that, because we're not going to have an answer. It's like, oh, wait, I'll just pay your bill every time. Like, that's not sustainable across the whole city. So sometimes just acknowledging, yep, like it's not great, but it's, I think, where we're at with this, unless one of our staff is about to tell us some really cool thing, but I doubt it.
One of the things that has come up in PIC before is that the paradigm of our waste management, solid waste management practices in King County and here in the city is that landfilling is a really old technology and just burying all of our trash. But there may be economic ways to offset the cost of landfilling, whether that's generating fuels or energy from waste. It might be some upfront costs, but in the longer term, there haven't been really studies that have been focused in King County because for the longest time it's just been cheap to throw it in the hole in the ground. But that time is coming to a close, and we need to be ready and flexible to meet that moment. And it might be kind of uncomfortable conversation to have that, you know, even these rates are increasing slowly and slowly, and there might have to be a jolt. But how can we be flexible and creative with other ways of solid waste disposal? Certainly there are other opportunities. So that's the sort of conversation that I expect we'll be having as other municipalities in King County. And, you know, Snohomish County, they ship their waste to a landfill on the Columbia by train. And so that seems even more unsustainable, and it'd behoove us to think about the future and the next generations and how we're going to be sustainable with our waste practices. So yeah, again, plug for that event. We need some representation there.
I just want to say you guys sounded so much more empathetic answering the questions than I did. Like, I have also pointed out that, like, this sucks and it hits my bill too. Like, I don't, like, it's not great. Like, it's just the best of a few options that are all compromised.
Well, and to your point, it was the best of the only option offered to us. So unless we were going to go back out and wait for more bids or possibly lose service, that was how we were able to continue service in the for our community members. I really appreciate that you all were willing to have that conversation on the dais and just be able to put it on the public record. I really appreciate the empathy and the commiseration as well, because I too got that bill, and I had actually gotten the email first, and I was like, oh, okay, so when I see my bill, I will know what to expect. And it was, yep, that was what it was. And yeah, I really appreciate Kirsten, Councilmember Curd, for your insights into like the long range planning and thinking about like from the, like, are there paradigm shifts that are possible for future generations, and what might those possibilities be? I know that in the time that I was on K4C, some of those conversations were happening, as well as MSWAC. It's not a meeting I attend very often, but a lot of those conversations are around increasing rates for disposal and how to help kind of blunt those spikes that might be coming, that are likely coming. So really appreciate all of you for being a part of that conversation and being responsive to our community. Thank you.
If I could just add one more thing. I think one talking point that I've found some success with, I wouldn't say like it's made the conversation a lot better, because it's really hard to have that conversation, but discussing the prior contract and the fact that staff was able to negotiate multiple extensions on that original contract, and how that helped keep the fee low for several more years beyond what it otherwise would have. People seem to really like that and recognize like, oh, the city did everything they could, and then the bid happened, and we had one opportunity, and we tried to maximize that through services that we were receiving for that increased bid, but that's the only option we had. So the city kept it as low as we possibly could for as long as we possibly could, and then we had to eventually all bite the bullet and pay what we had to pay. So you might try using that. It could soften it a little bit, but again, it doesn't take away the sting of the increase.
And with that, I would love to accept a motion to approve the consent agenda. Oh, yeah, projected agenda discussion. That's what I meant to say. Does anybody have anything? And with that, I'd like to accept a motion, Councilmember Dodd.
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Dodd and a second from Councilmember Aldrichs to approve the consent agenda. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? Yeah.
I have a hunch I'm going to be speaking for most of council here. I didn't want to pull this item. There's a few things on this consent agenda that the public might be interested in just going back and looking at. One that caught my eye that I think matters a lot to the public is that we have a bridge that is going to be paid for and built in this agenda item. So that's kind of a big deal because we tend to do things in baby steps. We do the planning first, and then we come back and we get the funding. We're getting a new bridge at Wing, the former Wing Golf Course, and it's nice to see us make some progress in our parks.
All right, City Clerk.
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorn,
Yes.
Mayor Thompson,
Yes.
Councilmember Aldrichs,
Yes.
Councilmember Kurd,
Yes.
Councilmember Menke,
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd,
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcott.
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Thank you very much. With that, we're going to take a quick break. It is 6:51. We will be back in 10 minutes at 7:01. I'm just moving paper around. All right. Next up, we have Chief Suberlick. Actually, I'm going to kick it.
That's all right.
City Manager, you take it from here.
You could have bypassed me. I wouldn't have complained. But no, you are correct. Our next presentation is by our police chief, Ken Suberlick. And the police department's not always in the real estate business. So when they are, we thought we might come and just update you a little bit more than normal about an agreement that we are looking to reach. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to the chief to walk you through a little background and explain what we're looking for tonight.
Well, all right. Thank you, City Manager Stannard. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and City Council members. So tonight, I'm presenting on a lease renewal request for our current off-site facility at Park Row in Woodinville. The site supports our critical police department functions, including evidence vehicle storage, and is also a training facility for us. This presentation is intended to ensure transparency and fiscal responsibility before finalizing the agreement. We are seeking your approval to enter into a new lease agreement aligned with market conditions and departmental needs. Historically, the police department stored impounded evidentiary vehicles at the city-owned site up on Brickyard Road known as Shop 1. In 2021, Shop 1 was demolished as part of WashDOT's I-405 expansion project, creating an urgent need for us to find another location. We identified the park at Woodinville as the most viable option, balancing proximity, security, and cost. The department began leasing that location in September of 2021, and it has effectively served our needs since that time. The Woodinville site was selected after evaluating multiple options with three primary decision drivers: proximity to Bothell, supporting fast and efficient access by officers; affordability with below market rates relative to similar east side locations; and functionality, including secure indoor garage bays suited for long-term storage, and a key component of that is heated storage. As an added benefit, when we rented the location, we had additional square footage that, in essence, I'm trying to make lemonade out of lemons, where we did some remodeling and we actually used some of the square footage for our training location as well, for our Virtua training machine and defensive tactics. Instead of extending our current lease, renewal option, which mandates a 5-year term at fair market value, we're pursuing a new 3-year lease. This new 3-year lease avoids rigid terms of the renewal clause, locks in below market rental rates, and the negotiated terms also provide flexibility to reassess our operational and financial priorities in 3 years rather than 5. The lease renewal will not require additional funding. It will continue from an existing funding stream already included in the PD's base budget. The finance director has reviewed and confirmed that the budget can absorb the lease costs. The source is appropriate and sustainable. The savings of approximately $48,000 over 3 years stem from both negotiated lower rates and the avoidance of relocation and build-out costs, which would likely occur if we sought another facility. So my request is adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a letter of intent and allow staff to negotiate a final lease under the same terms. If approved, a finalized lease will be brought before council for formal adoption at a future meeting, and the letter of intent locks in current negotiation terms, preventing any future rate increase and loss of leverage. How's that for real estate jargon? And do you have any questions for me?
Councilmember Alders.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate the photo of Shop 1, like historically, but I guess I can't picture where this is, and so I was wondering if there was going to be pictures. But maybe you don't want there to be pictures, and so I'm not. Anyway,
I would be happy to do a field trip with anybody on council that would like to go over there. It's unmarked. We don't advertise, and it's a police evidence storage facility. But it is it's relatively close. It's approximately the same driving distance for me driving there as it is to the north end of the city. Probably the elephant in the room is why Woodinville. And I will just say, when we were shopping for locations, it was challenging. We were finding a lot in Arlington, Granite Falls, and the like. And this was one of those locations that came up. And I'll just say it was kind of the Goldilocks fit. It was just in the right distance. It has to be near the police department. And we looked in Bothell. We tried to find a place up in North Canyon Park, but this is what we could find.
yeah. Well, we got lucky just getting the replacement for Shop 1 in Bothell, because there was talk for a while that that might not be in Bothell, and so that is not my concern at all. I do recall when I first joined council, we voted and approved some virtual training equipment.
Yep.
And from what I read in the packet, that it's housed in this location. And so if we were to do a field trip, we could also see the cool.
Yes, you could. It's
virtual stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like 3D, it's surround, anyway.
270-degree wraparound.
Yeah.
It's a virtual training environment. Decision maker.
Yeah. Very cool. Well, thank you for answering the questions that I have.
Thank you.
Councilmember Curd.
Thanks for the presentation. I don't have any questions. I think that you've done a good job vetting it, and I like the opportunity to check in 3 years instead of 5. So I'm going to move that we adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to sign a letter of intent with Park Row LLC and to direct staff to negotiate a lease under the same terms as outlined in the letter.
Second.
I have a motion from Councilmember Curd and a second from Councilmember Dodd. Would anybody like to speak to the motion? City Clerk?
Thank you. Please say yes or no when I call your name. Councilmember Zorns?
Yes.
Mayor Thompson?
Yes.
Councilmember Alders?
Yes.
Councilmember Curd?
Yes.
Councilmember Menke?
Yes.
Councilmember Dodd?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Alcabra?
Yes.
Passes 7-0.
Fantastic.
All right. Thanks,
Chief. All right, next up, we have a study session down there. It is 7:10. We will meet back at 7:15. All right, welcome back. Next up, we have a study session for the 2026-2030 Storm and Surface Water Master Plan update. So get ready for the Councilmember Curd show. And with that, I will kick it over to the city manager.
No, that's about right. We have 2 study sessions tonight. It's Public Works themed evening, and so our first update has been something that has been out in the community and coming to a close, and some next steps. So excited to hear tonight's update. Again, you'll hear in a moment. No action tonight, but definitely looking for feedback. And with that, I'm going to turn things over to our supervising surface water engineer, Janet Gear, to lead the way tonight. Thank you, Janet.
All right, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Deputy Mayor, and Council members. So as you mentioned, I'm just here to present the draft to you and give you some questions for consideration. So as you mentioned too, there is no council action required this evening. Staff is just seeking council feedback on the recommended draft actions. Just giving an overview, I'm going to provide a little bit of background, our outreach efforts, an overview of previous and current planned components, and then seek your feedback. The goal of this update is to provide staff direction for the next 5-year planning period. This will ensure the direction hopefully supports the Council's 2040 vision and strategic priority of environmental stewardship by ensuring systems adequately cool and filter stormwater to protect native habitats. It's also to ensure it aligns with state and federal permit requirements, community needs, and the mission and vision of the Public Works Department to build a foundation for community through meaningful connections and sustainable services. Some of the questions, and I'll put these up later for you as well, is just to make sure, are there any other key utility priorities missing from these recommended actions? And do you support the prioritization, the categorization of the recommended actions? So for our outreach efforts, we request feedback annually on our past year's program efforts and our next year's program efforts. So it's a pretty regular effort from Christy, who you saw earlier. And then we also do specific project-related outreach. So each of the projects listed in the plans have their own outreach that's associated with their grant funding, any permit requirements, and associated timelines. For this update specifically, we conducted a month-long virtual open house, and we sought feedback through the website, through e-news, through posters, and through social media. Some of the metrics that I was able to gather for this effort was that we had over 10,000 views with 30 people interacting digitally with the content, but we only received 1 comment so far, which is pretty typical of these larger planning documents. And they asked a great question: what's been accomplished over the last 5 years? So with that, I'm going to go through a quick synopsis of what we accomplished for the last 5-year period. So as mentioned, all priority actions and recommended efforts included in the 2021 plan are either complete or they're currently underway as part of our current source water program efforts. For projects, we did complete 7 design and construction projects. Total grant funding secured or spent already for this effort was $8.2 million, and we've applied for an additional $7 million. And just a caveat, that doesn't include any of the city match. That's only funding that's coming directly back to the utility. Direct impacts from those projects so far include improved process for identifying projects across divisions, reduced sedimentation to the Sammamish River, reduced flooding-related impacts to Parr Creek, and improved stream habitat on 3 Bothell tributaries, which were Blythe Creek, Parr Creek, and Colewoods Creek. For our program efforts, we maintained all the existing programs and reporting. For this planning period, we had expanded our spill response, and we created a new business source control program. We updated new and redevelopment standards. We created an enhanced maintenance plan to improve water quality treatment, and we mapped our drainage complaints. Those are all on CobMap, and they're public facing, so that any development now or any public or private project can actually review 1/4 mile, 1 mile downstream and make sure their projects are not negatively impacting their neighbors. We also created our first basin plan action. Just some considerations that we wanted to highlight for that previous plan was that we created a stormwater pond retrofit plan. We provided code language changes for consideration. We assisted with emergency preparedness planning. We developed our surface water management area strategies and actions, and reviewed ways to respond to climate change impacts. So For this draft plan, it builds upon those 2021 plan efforts and includes programs and projects designed to address the new NPDES permit requirements. Whoops, I jumped ahead. The Storm and Surface Water Utility leads these efforts, focusing on basin planning, stormwater regulation, facility construction, utility maintenance and operations, public engagement, and provision of storm and surface water management services. Highlighting just the projects included in this plan, there are 6 new projects, and then there are 6 continued feasibility, design, and construction efforts. Water quality retrofit projects are focused on high traffic areas that won't be improved through new and redevelopment projects. The program efforts are to maintain all of our existing programs, implementing stormwater tree canopy mapping and goals in assistance with community development, implementing a stormwater management action plan for the identified Upper Sammamish surface water management area, overburden community considerations, implementing our enhanced street sweeping program, PCB business and commercial outreach, and tributary mapping. And then just wanted to highlight a couple things that you would have seen in the plan as well, that we address new stormwater technology difficulties. Some of the new proprietary facilities that we're installing right now we're meeting with some issues associated with implementation on site conditions. And so we're working directly with those contractors and manufacturers to improve those facility technologies so that they both work now and then in the future going forward. So that'll be a focus of some of our new and redevelopment efforts. We're going to fully develop a citywide stormwater facility retrofit plan and prioritization. We will address the symptoms to streams from climate change impacts, and we really wanted to focus on addressing priority toxic chemicals as well through some of these facility retrofit efforts. Wanted to highlight and mention that our direction is going to be to increase access to stream and wetland habitats. So you'll see fish passage projects. We're also improving stream and wetland habitats through restoration efforts, those facility retrofits, regional facility creation, which you'll hear a lot more about when we come into like affordable housing that's not triggering the new and redevelopment requirements, and then increasing partnership opportunities. So working with surrounding jurisdictions and local nonprofits to increase timelines and success of outcomes. So those recommended actions, I tried to give a synopsis because there's a lot of them. So the critical priorities we listed on here, just to note that many of these are state or federally required, but some of these also go further than the requirements or are desired directly by the community. So those are the critical priority, and then we have the high priority actions, which again include kind of a mix of what's state and federally required in addition to community desires and staffing considerations. So with that, I'll bring it back to the questions that we had and open up the floor for any discussion.
This is a conversation. Okay, thank you so much for the presentation, and thanks. I've been seeing, like, the first time that it came up on Instagram that I was like so excited, and I saw like 1 like on there, and I was like, oh my gosh, someone else. It was probably me, but fake account. No, just kidding. Thank you. It was really exciting to read through the city's plans and having to do this in my day job and seeing how intentional and how programmatic, like everything that the city is doing, it's far reaching. It's not segmented. It's looking at the whole city. It's looking at all of the capital improvements that need to be done, it's just so comprehensive. And so I really want to do a shout out to Surface Water here at the city for thinking of everything. So I don't really have a lot of nitpick things. So I want other people to ask questions too, so that we can all learn together. But 2 of the questions that I have, 2 sort of like normal questions and 1 kind of crazy question. The normal questions are, fish passage barriers, and the work to address some of those barriers is ongoing. And one of the things that I sit in RIA 8 was doling out financial assistance to nonprofits and sponsors of projects that were looking to do stormwater or fish habitat projects throughout the city. And there was one project that was proposed and it got funded for some erosion control work up on like Finn Hill area. And it scored really low, but it still got over the threshold. But it scored low because there was no ability for fish to get across Waynita, like the road. And so because it was seen as sort of like disconnected, the improvements that were going to be happening for erosion control still were really important, and that was a great collaboration between private owners and the nonprofit. But I'm wondering about, so as we plan fish passage enhancement projects, we probably need to reassess some of the changing hydrology of the waterways in our city, especially given climate change and given changing patterns of precipitation and flooding and that sort of thing. So what are the ways that surface water is really looking to enhance what we know about the patterns that we're experiencing and that we will be experiencing, and how does that translate into design changes or what we know, and prioritizing all of the different barriers to fish passage throughout the city?
Right. So one of the things I can say is that Fish and Wildlife did a pretty comprehensive review of fish passage barriers, and they've got several that are identified in the city. So we were focusing on a lot of those that they had identified. As you know, they're very expensive, and so one project typically takes 2 or 3 different grants, and you know, with matching funds in order to be able to complete them. So we've slated one, and then we kind of have this longer list, that 7 to 20 year of as opportunities arise, we'll grab onto those. To your point, there's a couple things that we're doing with infrastructure and with fish passages. We were very excited. We were talking about it today, actually, that they've updated the WWHM model finally with current precipitation numbers. They've also included, I think it's 7 different climate models in WWHM as well. We're not going to make them required, but we'll certainly encourage their use. And then just even having that updated precipitation, what we're seeing when you run the analysis is that typically facilities are going to be 1 to 1.4% larger, just in that initial analysis. So that'll definitely help with flow control. And the other aspect with the fish passage specifically is we've been focused on what's going to open up the most habitat, or what is where, you know, we've got species of concern, specifically, you know, the Chinook and different salmonids. And we've got 3 or 4 that we've slated already. And so that was a conversation we were having too, is we can't wait 20 years to get these other ones done. So how do we accelerate those efforts as well? But the private project ones, so the one you were mentioning too, with working with some of these partner agencies, we're really interested in trying to reach out and helping those folks help these private property owners, because we have the same problem with several of our projects that they open up a section and then it's stopped by a private culvert that, you know, we could open up, you know, more miles of habitat just by working together.
Yeah.
So.
Water, unfortunately, or fortunately, doesn't know property lines. So,
right.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And one of the priorities for fish passage improvement projects in RIA 8 is focusing on improving access to habitat lower down in the system. And I know you know that. So just thinking about our own priorities and looking at opportunities that might come up with a series of barriers, or barriers that are easy for the city to like handle. Thinking about like the quality of habitat might be sort of marginal, but if it's low down in the system, that can actually be really helpful too for Chinook just trying to get out of the river. So cool, I love that. Other normal question was about trees, stormwater trees. So Department of Ecology and all of the regulations that are coming down are increasing emphasis on tree canopy and also on stormwater trees. And I know that we use the King County manual, drainage manual, and this is something that I had brought up before and I didn't really follow up on it. But do you anticipate that the King County manual is going to recognize stormwater trees and tree retention as sort of a best management practice in the near future, or do you see like the paradigm shifting around stormwater trees and their benefits rather than like quantifying those benefits and including them into calculations.
Right. And I'll look for Boyd to jump in here too. But one of the things that we were just talking about today is for new and redevelopment. I don't see them necessarily incorporating that into the King County Surface Water Design Manual. But as you know, we've got a whole planning component of tree canopy, and so what we're looking at is, with their urban forestry management plan, for example, there'll be 20, 30 goals, policies, but we're working to make sure some of those will align with stormwater goals as well, and we'll utilize those to focus our efforts. Things like protecting and increasing trees on riparian areas and, working on open space. When we completed an analysis recently, the greatest stormwater benefit for trees is really contiguously forested areas and cluster trees. And so that you'll see that coming, through on our point, because the forest has that duff and it has other elements that make it so important for water quality treatment, and especially its proximity to receiving waters. So, and again, sorry, we're getting into technical speak a little bit, but streams really like larger contiguously forested areas near them, and they tend to directly correlate to our bug samples, right? So our BIBI surveys, we tend to get better bug samples whenever there's a forested or robust riparian area associated with that stream. So, and I'll turn it over to you.
I really can't add much, but both the Ecology Manual and King County Surface Water Design Manual, you're trying to model to historic conditions. And historic conditions here aren't what was here 100 years ago. It's completely forested. So what Janet's saying is big on, because you can design a flow control facility. Think of our densities now, right? It can be 100% impervious, the buildings that are being built. The whole area can be impervious. You can design facilities for that to slow down water and to provide water quality so it just slows things down, right? Mimics the forested condition. But there is really no, in these management approaches, there's no, okay, don't take all the trees down, right? Because people want to develop and then mitigate their impacts. But there are opportunities when we're talking with community development is, okay, if you have areas with critical areas, can you expand those critical areas and look at additional tree planting there, especially within the watersheds? And so there's some really keen benefits that everyone working together and understanding that you still want to see the development that you've all adopted in 2024 comp plan, and that can be mitigated with stormwater management facilities, but also retaining canopy in areas that actually will help the environmental system is a really good way to go.
Yeah, the reason why I asked the question is because seeing recent development in subdivisions and seeing how young the trees are that are planted there is sort of frustrating, because the water that falls on the roadways is heating up really quickly there. Sure, we can try and infiltrate water, but that doesn't always work everywhere in the city because of our soils. And so I think that putting stormwater trees, like trees that are specifically designed for stormwater, into some of the plan, like bringing it from theoretical or bringing it away from tree canopy and saying we need to have 44% or whatever canopy coverage, and bringing it down to in the development process, looking at improvements to the way that the calculations are run and giving benefit to retention could be a way to offset some of those immediate impacts felt from stormwater in some of the subdivisions that are just, scraped and paved. So I think that's maybe a conversation that needs to be maybe elevated at for ecology and repeatedly to ecology and to King County when they consider updates to their drainage manual. I don't know if that's a very frequent thing or.
So the latest manual, because we're in that new stormwater permit cycle, King County is going to have to update theirs, I believe, by 2026, and then we'll have to adopt it by 2027. That hasn't come up as one that's going to be in this round, so it would likely be in the next permit cycle.
Okay.
And we can definitely have conversations about that. One of the things that we have found is that when you require some of those, again, those single trees, tend to not provide as much benefit. And so
Right.
it's with all of this, density that we're getting, what's the biggest bang for our buck? What, you know what I mean? What's going to be the most beneficial to local streams and habitat? And then, making those decisions.
And just to add to that if I can, if you think about a street tree, it rains in the winter, there typically are not leaves, and there is no duff or understory to help slow down the water or clean it. It just hits the concrete. A street tree is still a great thing. It provides shade, it provides amenities, everything else. We're really talking about things that mimic the natural environment. Reason I'm saying this is if you haven't driven down 35th north of 240th in a while, take a drive. It's a Bevel project. I think it's 47 homes. They had to restore and mitigate and put in a new channel. And because of that, they've opened this huge swath, which to me looks like a wildlife corridor, which to me looks like a future forested area. And then you were talking about fish culverts. Janet mentioned Colwood Creek. The city just completed a fish culvert there. And then a developer just downstream at 240th and 35th had to put a fish culvert in. So the city's actively looking at these opportunities, especially with new development. There's another similar project on Bothell Way, just across 201st, where we'll see another fish culvert. There's a washed out fish culvert coming out Crystal Creek, and there's some really cool opportunities out there. So Janet's group's always looking for those.
That's awesome. Okay, last weird question. And then I'll turn off my mic. So the weird question is, I was attending a salmon conference, and I heard they were talking about invasive species, which is great. Okay. And they were talking about a clawed frog, and they mentioned Bothell.
Yeah.
I had no idea that we were ground zero for an invasive species of frog, along with Lacey and Redmond. It's not just us. But so that was something that it happened a while ago, right? It was 2015, like 11 through 15 or something. And then WDFW, the Department of Fish and Wildlife, came and checked, and they said, oh, there's only 2 frogs, so nothing's, we're fine.
Right.
And I'm wondering, who checks that, and have we checked other stormwater detention ponds that we hear the chorus of frogs, and how many of those are invasive and are killing the juvenile salmon?
Right.
Yeah, should we be worried about that, and who do we resource to make sure that we're on top of that and we're controlling that?
Right. So you're correct. Fish and Wildlife had come out and found the African cloud frog in a couple of our detention ponds. And so what we did was implemented education and outreach for our staff, because a lot of times, as I'm sure you know, with invasive species, they're inadvertently actually spread by restoration folks, people doing monitoring. It's, the people who care the most are inadvertently spreading the invasive species. So, for example, with our monitoring program, we make sure that we only work in one watershed or one area at a time, and then we decontaminate all of our materials and equipment before we bring them into another watershed. So we're very cognizant of not spreading those. Same thing with the Vector truck, for example, when we're doing cleaning and that kind of thing, they're making sure that they are taking that to the decant facility. They're following proper protocol so that we don't inadvertently spread those on our own. I will say, like the New Zealand mud snail, for example, those are pretty prolific. We haven't found them yet in Bothell, not to say that they're not there, because you can fit 50 of them on a head of a penny. So they're pretty tiny, but we are definitely aware and doing our part as much as we can. Whenever we get reports, we do put those out on social media, e-news, and other ways to let folks know. But there are a lot of invasive plant animal species out there, so we're trying to minimize it as much as possible.
Sure. Yeah, that was just really interesting, and I wasn't really paying attention to the to the conference until they mentioned Bothell, and so I was like, oh wow,
yeah, it's not how you want to be mentioned.
Unexpected. Yeah, that's not a good mention. So yeah, thank you for your work, and I think education and outreach. One of the things that I was making notes about was to our community is one thing, and I know that there's a campaign that that Christy is working on, and it's really exciting. But also to staff too, and training staff to notice illegal discharge and stuff too is really helpful. So that's really important stuff, and I'm glad that our city's on top of it.
Great, thank you.
Okay. I was really, I like you, was very excited for this coming up. In fact, I was having a conversation with my 5-year-old grandson today, and he's from Sheridan, Wyoming, doesn't know about salmon and the whole salmon cycle. And so I'm telling him all about how, salmon starts off. And the conversation ended with, boy, salmon can't lay eggs. And I went, oops, I wonder if his parents have had that conversation yet. But, and this summer I had a chance to walk the wetlands down there at U of W campus, and we were talking about the bullfrog. Little did I know there's a clod frog that can add to the nightmares and angst. And if I have a reason to wake up and not want to go back to sleep, now I can worry about the clod frog and what is it, New Zealand mud snail? Mm-hmm. Stuff of nightmares. Okay, I have some comments and questions going through here, which I think is going to address what you're talking about, and I'll try not to go too long here. Stormwater trees, I'm like, I want to go hug everybody who's talking, seeing the importance of trees for the whole impact for cooling water and cleaning water and all that stuff. So I love there's a category, stormwater trees. So, and I'm glad to see that 6 ppd and other toxins are being talked about, and we're addressing that. I know that we have a top staff here, but you guys talk about it and put it as a highlight. It really encourages my heart. Not that that's what your job is, to how to encourage Jean's heart, but it does. So here's one question. Aside from Wayne, is there a bioswale or series of bioswales that you're proud of here in Bothell? Because we have a few, from what I read.
Bioswales that we're proud of.
Or were innovative for their time, of note.
That's a really good question. I'm trying to think of anything newer that we've done.
Because there was how many? There's a lot. We have a lot in Bothell.
Yeah,
yes.
But it's an older approach.
Yes.
But I will say
it has its place.
It does. It definitely does. And we are finding water quality wise that a lot of times when even the grass, or if it's just a basic bioswale, it's providing a water quality treatment level above a pipe system, for example.
Yes.
So we do have a lot of ditch lines and bioswales within Bothell. I can't think of anything offhand.
Okay. All right. I was just curious.
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious. And then. Are there, I think we had talked about it this spring, and I was curious of anything in the pipeline, figuratively speaking, that for more affordable ways to cool stormwater before it gets discharged out into the waterways?
I mean, the best way right now is still infiltration. It's where you're slowing it down, giving it an opportunity both to remove pollutants, but also to cool it down. We always are careful, though, too, when we're intercepting groundwater, because a lot of times it has lower dissolved oxygen levels. And so you don't want to inadvertently impact a stream as well. And so there's always this delicate balance of surface water. So, but yes, the best way to cool it down is to infiltrate it. That would be the first one.
That's a good point on oxygen levels, too.
Yeah, but to add that, with 6 ppdq, they're looking at compost as one of the ways to entrain some of those toxins, and WashDOT uses compost amended biofiltration swales. So as you drive down the road, you'll see these little standpipes every once in a while.
Okay.
The water goes into a long trench that's filled with compost that has an under-drain pipe, and it's a really effective way to go.
Okay.
It takes some real estate, but it is one of the approaches to take care of some of these
pollutants, but also, giving it an opportunity to slow down.
So it's a good way to go.
Can I give you a confession, and then you can just raise your eyebrows and go, oh, no, please don't do that? Because I've adopted some drains, and some drains where the leaves tend to just clog it up, I get that off. But I notice further up, there's just leaves that stay and behave themselves. And I think, well, if I don't mess with those, maybe they'll pull out some of the... Any rate, it's an effort. And the leaves, we have a great street sweeping system that comes and cleans it up, and then we can start the process over again with new leaves coming down and absorbing toxins. At any rate, you mentioned, and I missed what body of water, what stream you said that you were dealing with sediment. I thought it was the slough, Sammamish
It is,
Slough.
yep, the Sammamish River. So we upsized the sediment pond at Blythe Park because we were getting discharges into the Sammamish
Yeah.
River. So that one is actually just constructed and ready to go to create those bigger storm events
Right.
and then allow us to clean during the fish window so that we're not negatively impacting the
You
stream
guys are
zone.
so good. So question, because I know that when there's a huge, we have an area with a lot of rainfall, we get rain into the Sammamish Slough that just doesn't just come from Bothell, it comes from Woodinville and Redmond.
Right.
Are they being proactive at all in managing, trying to impact sediment that they would contribute, that would make its way down the waterway?
I would say, I mean, we're subject to the same requirements of the permit.
Okay.
So any new redevelopment, they're having to detain deforested conditions and, sediment removal. Redmond's really great about restoration efforts.
Right.
So they've done a pretty good job of sediment removal. I'm not too familiar with anything, Woodinville's doing above and beyond. I know Sammamish has got some projects that are, working to remove sediment. I will say the permitting agencies are not fond of inline sediment traps. And so in the past, we would put something, within the stream or near the stream to remove sediment. They do not want those anymore.
Okay.
And so we're looking at more natural efforts of, for example, like a side channel or something that we can clear during low flows or allowing their streams to have more sinuosity and drop that sediment out naturally.
So just out of a curiosity, without, chewing up too much time, why are they not, I mean, I can guess why they're not so fond of those old traps, but what was the biggest problem for them on it?
Well, for us, I mean, it's, really the amount of sediment and cleaning them within the fish window it becomes very problematic.
gotcha.
And they don't really want infrastructure anymore into natural systems. They really want you to, utilize natural processes to remove those sediments.
It's funny how that works. It does a
right?
good job.
Yeah.
Yeah, but just to add to this, like the Blythe Park project, which you can see from the playground, you'll look just immediately east, and it's just a long channel made of blocks with a rock underlayment. That was something that wasn't required for anything. There was excess sediment coming off a slope. It's not stormwater, but that's something that's a stormwater utility based on, council priorities. Let's clean it up. It did get to the point though, because it's a fish passable stream where you had to make that kind of balance. Do you dig up the entire park and make it a fish passable stream? Do you put this inline system to take sediment out of the Sammamish, which is really good, or do you do nothing? And the good news with the stormwater utility, they worked with Fish and Wildlife and came to a compromise, and this will help stream health in the Sammamish. It will take out sediment, so it's really pretty cool.
That's great. And I would assume that the size of Wayne allows us that wiggle room to really have an effective impact. I did go through one, I did see the stormwater or the Columbia River Basin and map on, I was like, oh, you guys put that in there. I love that, on how many states that it covers.
Right.
It was fun to see. Everyone should go look at that just to, appreciate how big water impacts what goes down in the Columbia. And I guess close to my last of my comments, I went through and I looked at our different water areas that we were focusing in on, and some of it was looking for, what do you call that, illicit discharge detection, and some of it was bacteria because higher frequency of sewers in certain areas, and I really appreciate the personalization that you put for different areas in Bothell. As far as your questions there, to officially answer them, stay the course. You're doing a great job being vigilant with how to manage this and looking for opportunities, and just any opportunity to expand the filtration system of our stormwater and cooling and pulling out toxins anytime that crops up. That's great. I think we've got an agenda bill that's coming up next that is going to speak to critical areas that also is part of this. So you guys are doing a great job. No criticism. You did this old heart good. So thank you.
Thank you.
you said you've adopted some storm drains, but I will say that you've unofficially adopted every storm drain, because I've never seen you pass one without clearing it if there's a blockage, so. The citizens of Bothell, thank you. And here's hoping the Claude Frog does not become our runner-up for city mascot to the crow, because we don't want that either. Question for you, in terms of cleaning stormwater, we often tell people that it goes right into the streams, but it looked like from the packet there are some facilities that do some level of cleaning. When do we put those in? Like, what's the criteria for putting those in, and how much of the stormwater actually gets cleaned through there in comparison, like throughout the whole city? Is it 10%? Is it 20%? Is it less than that?
That's a good question. I'd have to go back to our maps to give a specific percentage, but what we did was we mapped, and to come up with terms, there were, when stormwater facilities were first created, they had minimal flow control and not really very good water quality treatment. Obviously, as our design manual has, improved and our design standards have improved, for example, when he mentioned we're going all the way back to forested conditions, and now we're looking at not just what we call basic water quality treatment, but enhanced treatment to remove those toxins of concern. So if you look at the map citywide, you'll see where we call them vintage, and what vintage means is it's not current standards. And so the vast majority of the city has something as vintage. The new and redevelopment projects, as they come in, they come up to current standards, so you'll see new on those. And then where the focus of the previous permit was on new and redevelopment, they're understanding that we've got so many of these developments that are not likely to fully redevelop, completely, to trigger a full, new facility, for example. But we could focus on existing, and so now ecology is giving us credit to go back to those existing systems and retrofit them to more enhanced water quality treatment and better flow control. And so that's when I mentioned the previous one, what we realized was our stormwater ponds, while they're functioning, they're not great and they could improve. And so we started with the stormwater ponds. And so we've got a full comprehensive list, and we're tackling those things through additional maintenance, sediment removal, redesigning, and then adding water quality treatment either above or below, depending, to provide that enhanced water quality. And then what you'll see in this manual is that we're looking to go citywide with a comprehensive look. And where we really want to focus on is what's not already going to be handled by new and redevelopment. So when you see those maps in there, that's what we went through with the consultants, is what is likely to develop, because it seems, there's one home there and it's easy to make it, 3, 4, which will trigger, our requirements. I should say 3, 4 of certain square footage, right? Certain impervious surface, which will trigger, versus those ones that are not likely to require facilities on their own. And those are the ones we're going to focus on. So what you see in there right now is some of those projects. We're focusing on things like 522 and major arterial routes or minor arterial routes or collectors that are going to have lots of trips, so likely more 6 ppdq, for example. And so we're looking at facilities. We're working with parks and others to where can we install these facilities on already city-owned land, or where can we acquire land. We're getting kind of creative with some of the right-of-way areas that we currently own that aren't being utilized. Can we stick a vault under there, for example? That type of thing. So we're really focused on the most traffic areas for this next 5 years, and then we'll look at those, the smaller neighborhoods, and then those neat opportunities, things like stormwater parks or, other opportunities where they might have 2 or 3 uses on site that people might not even know that we're filtering stormwater as they interact with the space.
I'm glad we're doing that. I think it's the first time I heard that it goes directly into the streams, most of it. I was pretty shocked. Mm-hmm. I never thought about it before until someone made that statement. And even when you hear Puget Sound starts here, you're like, okay, well, surely it goes through all these processes, but that's not the case in the most part. So right. glad we're working on that. The culvert that was mentioned on 35th, is that part of the Bevel development, or is that part of another project?
That's north. So Bevel's the private development, and then 236 also, the culvert was done as part of the private development, but we completed the Colwoods Creek. So it was a neat opportunity because it opened up 1.2 miles of stream, but we know fish are there, and we've seen fish there for years, and there was only 2 property owners, which again, Capital will tell you is crazy, great experience where you're only working with two property owners that are both interested, in completing a project. And so it took a little while, but that was our project that we completed.
But once again, this is more shout outs. I'm here to help and support. But even like the Bothell project, that came through development review, but they only had to put in half a fish culvert on 35th. And it's right at the location of a future roundabout. It's on the CFP list. So we all work together and we help support the developer and work with Fish and Wildlife. It's like install the full culvert, go to town as much as you can get. And council, thank you, adopted Title 18 changes last year where we can actually give them facility charge credit. So that's your dollars at work. They spent way more than they got credit for, but it was still a really good value. And they benefited, we benefited, the environment benefited, the capital facilities project will benefit, and it's just it's really, really cool. So it's neat stuff.
The city's project looks really good. I drive through there every day, every morning and every night. And also the Bothell project looks they did a really good job. So I'm pretty pleased with what we were able to do for the environment. So thanks for helping them do that, and I'm glad to see they were willing to partner to do more than they actually needed to do. Yeah. In terms of your questions, I think all the priorities seem right to me. Categorization seemed good, and I thank you for the work.
Great, thank you.
All right, this has been some really great discussion so far. These are not prioritized. They're just these are questions that came up in the order of discussing them or when they came into my head. I really appreciated hearing about seeing street sweeping as part of the priorities. And just this last week, I learned that there are street sweepers that are equipped with traffic, parking enforcement sensors. I don't know if you've ever heard of this. And I don't know, I think limited functionality for us in the areas that we want to have traffic enforcement or parking enforcement, but I just wanted to throw that out there as a thing that somebody created somewhere. And I really do appreciate on page 95, you have a map of the creeks and streams and rivers with forest areas and wetlands marked on it. So you can kind of see, I'm wondering, it's kind of a difficult map to read in terms of complicated. There's a lot on it. I wonder if it might be easier to look at so what is forested is not the same as a designated forest in our community. And so if we have designated forests, it might be really nice to see these are the designated forests and how they overlay onto our watershed areas. And then to understand better the other forested areas that aren't designated. What mix of privately owned property are those? What mix of publicly owned? Because those are the areas that either are conserved, are prone to development, or we actually can do something to save and protect them. And I also think that seeing the wetlands because some of our wetlands are also forested too, seeing those marked on there, because we do have some designated wetland sites that have the benefits of the environmental, the positive effects of being an environmentally good place for water to go and get cleaned before it goes in further into our stream system. Okay, and then last question. Is when you're prioritizing the retrofit projects, I really appreciated that you also included in our packet the overburdened communities. Are you looking at the overburdened communities map to help you determine where to go for the next, to choose your retrofit projects? And is there a plan to help reduce some of that overburdened those overburdened communities in some areas? And that's I think you've already done that work, mainly because I think you are doing a very good job of listening to the community and to council when we say that we are centering equity in the work that we're doing. And so I just would love to hear that what I think you're doing is actually what you're doing.
So we mapped them in the previous effort, and we went through a mapping exercise again last year. One of the things we did talk with community development about is they have a slightly different map based on their criteria, and so we're talking with GIS, for example, right now to make sure that we work together on those and come up with one, continuous that both meets, the ecology requirements, our desires, and the desires associated with kind of like the climate vulnerability, for example, that they've got in their report. Yes, and then our next steps that we're doing right now is that we're looking at tree canopy associated with those neighborhoods. We're also looking at treatment facilities associated with those, and then we're looking at outfalls. And to your point of impacts, but just so you know, a nod to Department of Ecology, it's required, and so everyone will have to do that by 2028. We're just trying to get ahead of the game.
Bothell has a reputation of trying to do that, and I appreciate staff who are willing to go along with that and support those goals. So thank you.
Mm-hmm.
This is all great. I think you're on exactly the right track, and I could not even pretend to come up with better questions than the people who've gone before me. So thank you.
Thank you.
What she said. But also just thank you very much. We really appreciate you guys coming out here. And Janet, every time you come here and show us something, I am always so happy with what you show us, even if it's about different things. So when I see you coming, I'm like, oh, goody. And tonight was no exception. So thank you. And Boyd, I love it when you're like the main person presenting, but also when you're somebody else's hype person and you just roll in, isn't she great? Every like 5 minutes or so, that's pretty cool too.
She's great.
Yeah.
Right. Best boss ever, right?
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much.
Thank you.
I'll also just say a shout out to the Cure and Place pipe that we got to approve on the consent agenda tonight. We didn't get to talk about it or see it demonstrated, but we will forever think of you when we see that.
It's too late, but thank you for approving that. But what that was is they're not using UV cured pipe in the storm. They're using fold and form pipe where they take a structural liner, fold it up, yank it in and pop it open. And so we're already looking at this type of use for water mains. You don't see that on the West Coast that much, but we have some folks that are going to be presenting that because we could do some serious good work for storm and also for water with this type of technology. And so we're really excited. And we've invited the other utility districts to kind of participate. So next time we bring something in, hopefully it's say, look at this. Sorry.
It's for storm.
It's for storm.
Thank you.
It's for storm.
It's not every day that saying sewer pipe makes me think of you is a good thing. So good job, everyone.
All right, it is 8:02. We are going to take another quick break until 8:15. All right, welcome back, everybody. Next up, we've got Agenda Bill 25159, the Critical Areas Ordinance Update, and I'm going to kick it over to the city manager.
I think I'll just turn it straight back over to our deputy director, actually, at this point, so I don't steal any of his best lines.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody. Glad to be back at the table. First, credit where credit's due. Jacqueline Sampson, our planner, she put most of this, if not about all of this together. She's on vacation, so I'm filling in, but she did not do this on vacation. A very, very strict line of where work takes place, but want to make sure that she gets that credit. Tonight, no action. We're just looking for guidance, trying to keep this as high level as possible, as this is the first study session on the topic on the Critical Area Ordinance update and some potential updates to our locally established SEPA threshold exemption levels. I want to get into just a brief background, talk through kind of what critical area code changes there are, some moderate, minor, and then the no changes. Brief discussion on what the SEPA update might look like, and then talk about next steps. Series of questions that were within the packet materials. I've got these down at the end of the slides as well, just to think through, looking at approach as we look to establish these new standards. So with that, I'm going to just jump right into background. So in 1990 with the GMA, it established kind of what we know as the Critical Area Ordinance framework, how local jurisdictions regulate streams, wetlands, their associated buffers, and the like. The last update, comprehensive update, was in July of 2019. Starting in 2023, we had a Best Available Science, a BAS summary prepared by Facet, formerly known as DCG, the Watershed, or the Watershed Company, which I've been working with for years, so I might revert to that original term. They produced a recommendation report as part of all the comprehensive plan work in 2024. They delivered it at the end of the year with the understanding that we would be using it this year for this update, as are all the other jurisdictions that went through their comp plan updates last year. We do have a deadline to update the CAO, Critical Area Ordinance, by the end of this year under the GMA. And then we have met with Planning Commission, just to note, back on July 16th, and we have a scheduled meeting with them later this month, next week. Critical Area Ordinance must be based on best available science and be consistent with the GMA. This is affecting only Title 14.04 of the Bothell Municipal Code. The SEPA discussion is in 14.02. What this does not cover is the Shoreline Master Program in Title 13. And that's an important distinction because we have both North Creek and parts of Wainita Creek and the Sammamish River that are under the shoreline jurisdiction. So that's not part of this discussion. That will come back for the 2029 update, which should be kicking off 2027, 2028, depending on the rulemaking process. So I just want to make sure we're framing this correctly. So we broke it down into moderate, minor, and no changes based on the Facet report that's in the packet. The main item that we feel like needed to be discussed and needs to rise to the surface is the discussion around fish and wildlife habitat conservation areas, stream buffers, and the recommendation from Fish and Wildlife to pursue a site potential tree height approach. The minimum recommendation is a 100-foot buffer to provide for water quality. Within that recommendation, there's also a sort of paired recommendation of adding a vegetative buffer standard. Vegetative buffer standard just means it's planted either existing or it's installed with native vegetation for that buffer. So instead of the variability of a site potential tree height approach, which could be anywhere between 102 and 187 or 200, over 200 feet, depending on the soil conditions, our approach, as is with many other jurisdictions going through this, which Jacqueline's been coordinating with Woodinville, Kirkland, Shoreline, Kenmore, and others. Most cities are approaching this from what works for them best, and there's no one right size, but looking to do a fixed 100-foot stream buffer for all stream types and applying a vegetative buffer standard. I've got a slide, the next one down here, to kind of run through what that looks like in a chart and talk through. It promotes the improvement of that ecology while understanding someone may not want to pursue that and just apply the 133-foot buffer, so adding 33%. The same vegetative buffer standard would apply in the wetland standards. The other minor changes, we looked to eliminate the variance criteria. There are already flexibilities created within the critical area ordinance, such as buffer averaging, where you would sort of teeter the buffer. You've got so much square footage, you can only reduce it by so much. Or for those sites that are completely encumbered with stream buffer, wetland, and the like, they could pursue a reasonable use exception. Then we also look to add nonconformance standards to the code. As with growing buffers, it could create those nonconformities. So this slide represents kind of what the current buffers are. We have 3 different stream types within our jurisdiction. Type F, so fish-bearing streams, perennial streams that are non-fish-bearing, and then intermittent. So they have those varying stream buffers. Like I mentioned, the site potential tree height would create a lot of variability. In looking at those maps, we can come back with some illustrations at our next discussion just to sort of punctuate what that variability would be. You walk across the street, you go to the neighboring property. Based on that map that exists, your buffer could be 187 feet, your neighbor's buffer could be 105 feet. You have to look through that or do a soils analysis to figure out what type of soils would typically support a certain type of tree. What our approach is to do is to just run 100 feet across the board. If you want to vegetate that with all natives meeting a standard that we're developing based on what other jurisdictions have, you keep it at that 100 feet. If not, and you just want to say, what's there is there, I just want to observe 133 feet, fine, you can go forward and develop that. Creates a lot more predictability than having to go out and assess soil conditions, what those buffers, how they may change over larger sites, and captures what we think is the approach that, one, meets the minimum recommendation for water quality while improving the habitat with native plantings in those areas. I want to pause there. This is the last slide of the moderate changes, and run through any questions. The minor are pretty brief, and so forth, if that works for everyone.
Go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. You have a question? Go.
Just a quick question. I noticed a couple other cities here have a different and a smaller reduction or smaller buffer widths. What do we give up when we do that? And can that be mitigated?
If we increase our buffer widths,
if we decrease our buffer widths,
if we decrease them, we are not providing the water quality, meeting that water quality minimum recommendation from the state. It can create nonconformities, which is why we're adding a section on, what to do if your home is nonconforming or your structure is nonconforming. How do you add on to it? And creating those avenues for maintaining structures, even expanding structures, understanding that if it's going from a 75-foot buffer to 100 feet, you've got to figure out a way to continue to live, adjacent to and maintain that buffer.
Okay.
Okay, so I have seen development in the past where there has been a significant tree that sits right on the a property line, just as an example. And that tree is not preserved because on the other side, the person who wants to develop it wants to cut out a whole bunch of what that tree would use to support. So it's a little bit comparing apples to oranges, I realize that. I'm concerned that there will be significant trees that would be within the 100-foot buffer that are so close to that 100-foot mark that if we don't allow a 25 to 50 feet, I would, my inclination would be to go 50 feet as an added buffer for those trees to exist, that we would lose really valuable function of what those trees do ecologically on a whole bunch of levels if we don't allow a little buffer for the trees that stand within that 100-foot buffer. If I understand what was being recommended by, is it Facet? Is that, like for a Doug fir, it would be 230 some odd feet? I can see why that would give people pause that that's a little excessive. They are big trees and they send their roots everywhere. But if there is a significant tree that's within that 100-foot buffer, I would like us to have the caveat that says we're going to give a little bit extra buffer to preserve the life of that tree so it can continue its function on for the rest, to the water line. But I agree, 231 feet is a little excessive. But if we could, I also thought Facet, I've got it right? Facet? Facet makes a valid point. So where can we kind of moderate that a little bit, where we can preserve trees that put some time in, and they probably serve a function of holding down invasives because they provide quite a bit of shade, and invasives love sun. If you take those trees out, now you got somebody who's going to be battling invasives in a critical area that we're trying to protect. So that's my two bits on that is, could we err on the side of caution but not be heavy-handed about it?
Yeah, and there is a 10-foot buffer setback proposed. Currently, it's 15 feet. So from the 100-foot mark, from the edge of the stream channel, you've got 100 feet of buffer. And then from that point on, you've got 10 more feet. That is similar to a setback from a property line, where that's where the assessment of that tree, and it's, from an arborist, what type of impacts can it take? That evaluation would be part of that critical area assessment, and how can it be protected and retained? If it's within that space, right at the edge, it'd be something that we would have to evaluate.
And we don't have tree protection that says you can't take that tree down. So, someone, before they go in and start developing, there would be probably nothing to stop them from taking that tree down. But
if it's in the buffer, however, they are protected. Everything within that distance,
regardless if someone's coming in with a project or
right,
not.
Right.
Which is fantastic. Okay. Well, 10-foot setback from that 100-foot buffer, I don't know if that's enough for a significant tree that's, performing a good function. I hate to be heavy-handed about it, but there is a certain margin of giving due diligence for what that function of that critical area is, but not hyper so.
I'll jump in and just say that the proposal around the current stream buffer, or the changes to the stream buffers, I think is both a way to simplify the code and incentivize vegetation. Because if people want to make more use of their land, they would say, oh, I could do that if I just plant some trees. And so I like when those types of things can kind of work together, because I think the environment is better off, and with a little extra effort, people are able to receive a benefit for the use of their property as well. So I'm in support of the proposed stream buffer.
All right, I'm going to ask the question a little more pointedly this time. There's a city neighboring us that has, I believe it's 75 and 100-foot buffers instead of 100 and 133. Like, what does that buy us? Like, why should we be more restrictive?
And those are their current buffers. So everything within all of our neighboring jurisdictions is in flux at this point, and no one's really settled on that. They're all having these same conversations. How should we approach this? As we learn more, we can come back with that data on what our comparables are. The currently, within the packet, the jurisdictions that we were able to get some information from, some were still to be determined. It's like Newcastle. Kirkland's proposing 100 feet, allowing a 25% reduction.
That's what I mean. So they're like basically 175 instead of 133 and 100.
Right. So yeah, they were decreasing. They were proposing to decrease their type N and NP and NS streams down to 75 feet. We can see how those conversations went.
Okay.
And they started there with 100 feet, yes.
I'm a little concerned with going from 75 to 133 without buffering, just because that's on some properties that's going to take away literally anything they could ever do on it. So I guess I would just need to like really understand the reason, like, and the need for it. And if there's a need and it's really important, like, I'm open to having the conversation. I'm a little uncomfortable with that increase in buffer width of pretty dramatic amount.
Okay. Any others on?
Yeah. I approach this. There's a couple of things that I just want to like call attention to. One, you said it already, but the maps at the very end of the packet show that this is affecting the streams that are not subject to shoreline management area regulations. So these are not our most critical streams. And there's a variety of existing habitat in those streams that are affected by these buffer widths. And it's possible to have buffers that need a lot of work too. And when we don't, when we have kind of a hands-off approach to it, this is where we can get infestations of knotweed taking on in neighborhoods that no one, it's fenced off, it's out of sight, out of mind, it's not managed. So I think that there's a couple things that are interesting that we have options to kind of investigate, and it's an opportunity to rethink the way that we protect these areas and we manage them. The transition that Kirkland is considering here to do away with buffers and setbacks and stream center lines and just going to a riparian management zone seems really interesting and a lot more easy to communicate to landowners how that part of their site is affected and is so I like thinking about things not in terms of like, well, there's a 33%, like there's percentages of reduction or increases depending on how you manage it or what you plant. That's really complicated. And when it's really complicated, one-off landowners aren't going to necessarily understand or engage. I know that we heard from Surface Water last year or 2 years ago that their behavior change program was streamside landowner engagement, and it wasn't very effective because each streamside landowner has different sort of approach to their property and understanding of their critical areas. And so it's not as though these regulations hit a property owner and then they understand that they understand the potential. And especially when we start putting flexible reductions or increases on a buffer or a setback from a buffer, it just makes it just confounds it even more. So I think one of the things that I'd be looking for in new regulations are consistency and sort of ease of communication. This not only helps developers to understand what they need to do and what they are supposed to, like how they can do their pro forma and look at what the encumbrances are, but it also helps existing property owners know what parts of their property are sensitive and which ones they can help protect our waters, our shared waters. So I kind of, as a soil scientist, I shy away from looking at sort of the site potential tree height buffers, even though they might be like perfection, but our soils here in Bothell are heavily disturbed. We've been urbanized for a long time, and before being urbanized, suburbanized, we were logged. And so our soils here are really mixed up, and the site potential tree height designation depends on undisturbed soil type, and we don't necessarily have that in areas. And so I think that the facet recommendation of going up to 230 feet is probably not appropriate, even in terms of like our best available science. We don't have good, like the last time the soil samples were done were in the 80s, and they were these huge polygons, and like you said, it shifts based on like one neighbor could have a 230 and one could have a 94. That just doesn't seem consistent, and so I support looking into these, and I think that we should have the conversation. I also don't necessarily want to rely on the proposed standards in Table 1 here in the packet that shows what Kirkland is proposing to do, because stream types can change from F to NP to NS. And so that's not necessarily a consistent thing either to depend on. So yeah, I'm looking for consistency, and I'm hopeful that Planning Commission can really dive into this and maybe be helpful to see a map of kind of comparing, but the maps at the end of the packet are very enlightening to see exactly which properties would be affected by this and how much a 100-foot setback really looks like. Buffer, excuse me, not setback. This is why we don't need to have all these words. Yeah, so I think I'm supportive, but would encourage staff to look at kind of consistency and making things as simplified as possible, just for the benefit of existing property owners as well as developers too, who are looking to change uses on a property.
Shall I move on to the minor? And all right, just a few minor changes. Obviously, updating definitions, including new definitions as we go through this process. We are looking to, I'll say, rebrand from stream buffer to riparian management zone. It's a bigger task than you'd think, where you find the term stream buffer and have to make sure you're capturing every single one. Clarify the applicability under the for small isolated wetlands. The recommendation was to add an exemption. We already have one. It just buried further down, so we'll make sure that that's very clear. These are for small isolated wetlands that are of a lower type. We want to make sure we update the noxious weed list, or the reference to the noxious weed list as that changes. And just, it's always nice to reference something that we don't need to update. And then adding some signage standards for, or signage standards, as I've marked here. Because I really want to make sure that we sign those critical areas with fencing. I think I was probably trying to say signage and fencing standards for those boundaries of critical areas, really making sure that the current and future property owners, as well as the general public, are aware of those. And then there were a series of no changes. These are just a few of them based on the recommendations from Facet. A couple that we leaned heavily on the Public Works engineering crew, Boyd and his group, on the flood hazards, making sure that we were consistent with those, as well as the geologically hazardous areas. So all in all, pretty minor changes, and then a series of nothing that we needed to do. So the focus really is on those more moderate ones.
For the moderate changes, you mentioned updating reference to noxious weed code. Do you use Snohomish County or King County's noxious weed list?
I can look into that. We can make sure we either reference both. because sometimes there's
some differences.
delays when one is adopted in the next one, so it can make sure that we've got the most recent best of both worlds. That's the benefit of straddling a county line, I suppose.
Love it. Thanks.
And then finally into the SEPA update. So the categorical exemptions. So what this is for those that don't live in this every day, the state establishes thresholds where projects can outright be exempted, and then they set a maximum. So you can, and right now the state says, okay, 4 residential units, that's the minimum, that's the floor that you can set as something to require a State Environmental Policy Act review, up to, I think it's 30 single-family residential units. The thing about SEPA is that it sometimes creates an ill-conceived conception that it can create mitigations. Our code already has a lot, if not many, of the mitigations that you'd expect, such as stream buffers or tree protection or lot coverage or height. So those things already exist and are baked into the code. We looked at the last 10 years, and of the 194 SEPA determinations, only 3 had mitigations. So mitigations would be something that you create out of thin air. A lot of the times those mitigations end up resulting in new codes. The 3 examples, one was for Chick-fil-A, and that was about traffic, as everybody could understand, traffic and queuing. One was for the removal of an underground fuel tank. We doubled down on the state requirements, just making sure they were very, very clear on what those mitigations had to be. And one was for a single-family home that was excavating a great amount of soil because of the slope that it was on. And so we wanted to make sure we pushed and made sure that their critical area, their geotechnical conditions and mitigations were followed to the T, even though they weren't based in code, but we did want to make sure that they were doing that. So all those other 191 just had to meet the code. So what we're looking for is to potentially raise that threshold and go to the maximum that the state establishes as far as a starting point for the conversation. Some cities go to the maximum, some are somewhere in between. And we just, we think what it would do is create a whole lot of predictability for the development community. It doesn't undermine anything else that's within SEPA. If you're doing 30 residential homes under a subdivision and you're exempt, but you're excavating 2,000 cubic yards of soil, you're still going to go through SEPA because you have to for that soil portion. So this table is in the packet as well. It shows you where we align with several other jurisdictions. The very interesting one is the Snohomish County in the Muga, so across the street from someone. You can do 30 single-family homes without a SEPA notice. You still may receive project notice, and you would still in the city of Bothell. If you're doing a 30-lot subdivision, if you're doing a 6-lot subdivision, you're still going to receive public notice. So happy to answer any questions about these. Staff do feel that the predictability aligning with somewhere along the mid to upper range of this would be helpful, especially given the development that we're anticipating. An example of a project that we've seen, a 4-lot short plat would be exempt. However, if they were proposing duplexes under middle housing, that would be 8 units. These are units that we're talking about, not lots. So they would have to go through SEPA. It's one other step, one other cost, one other process to go through. So again, that's what we have. There's no action, just initial thoughts and feedback. Our next steps, Planning Commission is next week. We've got a future study session already scheduled, planning out public hearing and potential ordinance adoption, and then looking to wrap this up by the end of the year deadline. And I'll leave the questions up there and can toggle back through slides if you'd like me to.
I approve of staff's recommending to raise them to the maximum possible threshold. I feel that SEPA was designed to stop bad things from happening, and it was very good at that. And now we need to build good things, and SEPA is still stopping things from happening. And like you mentioned, 3 of them required mitigations. The mitigations are already in our code. In 191, it was just unnecessary regulatory burden. It was just making it harder to build what we need for our community to thrive. So I am fully in support of staff's recommendation on this. Thank you.
I'll jump in and echo that. This is your slide on slide 15 is really helpful to show, the max threshold, where we're at and how we compare to neighboring jurisdictions. And as long as the max threshold is within, SEPA's, like, this is safe for the environment, like, then I support that. Like, they wouldn't make a recommendation that they didn't feel comfortable with as a max. And so that is, it's something that I'm willing to get behind, unless you have additional context you want to share about why that max is set the way that it is. Okay.
What kind of comments come in on SEPA normally? Are they people saying, this is too close to my property, or this is going to have too many cars, or whatever? Or is it actually like substantiated, like problems with the environment?
Yeah, I think I could say anecdotally over the years, very few substantive comments come in. They're generally along the same lines as concerns around traffic, associated with a short plat or a multifamily project, lighting, things we have standards for already, and we, that's our typical response. Thank you for the comment. Want to point you to the direction of our lighting standards for exterior lighting, noise, traffic, whatever those concerns may be. And it's a pretty high bar for someone to pursue a SEPA appeal. But yes.
So what you're saying is those comments would come through on a project notice anyway, and the response from the city is going to be the same, and it's still not going to have an impact necessarily on the project, or it might if for some reason staff didn't catch that, yes, it has parking issues or something.
Yeah, and the majority of projects would already be going through a public process. They would already receive public notice for the 6-lot, 8-lot, 10-lot short plat or multi-unit development.
If something has to go out for SEPA, is the radius around the project area different from what we send out? I mean, I got a SEPA notice for the stormwater pond because it's near my house, but maybe not for a short plat that's also nearby, but not. Are the notice requirements different?
It's equal to or less. Currently our public noticing is 500 feet to residents, property owners and residents of the subject parcel. So SEPA does not extend beyond that.
Okay, no. But it could be less.
It could
In
be.
what circumstances would it be less?
Well, it could be. It depends on if it were, I suppose, if it were appealed. I'd have to look into the process code.
Okay.
Just to double check and get back.
Just wondering. I'm supportive of moving up to the maximums. I think it's a redundancy now too. Like what the mayor said, it's not necessarily protecting the environment past what we've already intentionally done in our code to make it localized. And I trust us more than the state to protect our local environment. So the maximum threshold appears to be, just as important. And it seems to be working for some other jurisdictions here. So I'm in support.
Could I ask a quick question? And it's based on an old experience. And I'm sure the city has moved on from something that happened with us. The property was never developed or hasn't been developed yet, but at the point, it was 10, 15 years ago, an office building was going in. And we took advantage of SEPA, and what we asked for was the dumpster to be moved to a different part of the building where it would be accessed, moving it away from homes to the more busy street side. And we went through the SEPA process for doing that. So for something like, and it would have been a big deal if the building had gone in. The neighbors would have appreciated the garbage accessed from the main street side. So my question is, in a situation like that, where it's a little thing of like neighbors would like a consideration of something big, like where a big truck would be coming in regularly, how could they affect change if SEPA isn't doing that for them today?
Yeah, I think it's hard to answer that directly, but I do think, you know, through every experience of a public comment on a publicly noticed project, our codes get better and better and better. We establish lighting standards, we establish, you know, circulation standards, we establish trash enclosure standards, and so through the public process for a larger development like that, that's where the public comment and the communication with staff and the developer, where I've seen that happen without having to go through any SEPA process, just the way that the road was designed, could we get some landscaping here or here? We asked the developer said yes, we added it in as a condition of approval with their blessing. So there's ways to do it without having to go through SEPA, but
does SEPA carry more weight though when you're going through SEPA you know, a request like that? Would SEPA carry more weight with a developer?
It would. One would have to prove that there would be a substantial detrimental, you know, environmental impact. So I would lean into the conversation with staff and the developer and working through those questions and concerns that they may not be thinking about through that public process. So I don't necessarily, I can't say yes or no if SEPA would get that same result that just the communication through the development public process would get.
So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that regardless if SEPA is there or not, for situations like that, SEPA is, even though the avenue of SEPA was used, what the avenue that that conversation happens through is with staff and construction or developer with community input on it.
Right, because there could be no guarantee that even going through that process, the same result through SEPA would be achieved. Because the development standards exist with circulation, access points, roadway standards, those things.
Yeah. The only reason why I'm asking is that, you know, when somebody's home is being impacted by a neighboring change that's pretty big, you want to make sure that they still have a voice and they're heard, and that's why I was asking you that question. So thank you.
I'm not seeing any more questions. Do you have what you need?
Yep, thank you.
Awesome.
We'll see you next time.
Sounds good. We'll see you. And with that, we're adjourned.